Okay, so I just watched this movie on Netflix called The Similars, or Los Parecidos. And I had a couple of glasses of wine while I was watching it, a sandwich. Oh, by the way, I fried up some onions, put them in between two slices of cheese. Just cheddar, just ordinary cheddar. Ordinary white bread, bit of butter. Fried that up, made a nice cheese melt. That went real nice with a cheap rosé. But I'm getting sidetracked. We should be speaking about Los Parecidos. This movie is like a pretend movie from the 60s, and it's amazing. I'm going to talk for a minute just about the effort that went into pretending this movie was from the 60s. Because this isn't a real movie from the 60s. I think this movie was filmed like a couple of years ago. It's on Netflix. I'm not trying to shill for Netflix, but saying it's on Netflix is a real easy way to get people to just go watch this fucking movie, and you should go watch this movie. I think it's a Spanish film. I think it's from Mexico. No, I don't think it's a Spanish film. I just watched a whole fucking subtitled movie for an hour and a half in Spanish. It's definitely a Spanish film. I believe it's from Mexico. It's set in the mid 60s, and it's okay. I'm a hack who has access to like a bootleg of Flash from the 90s that doesn't really run on my computer. But let's say I wanted to pretend something I had that was footage was from the 60s. I would sepia tone it, and I would throw a really basic filter on it. That was like maybe like a little like 3 or 4 frames thing looping around. It would be real cheap. Compared to that, as a terrible baseline of ridiculous ineptitude, but that's what it's for. What this movie did, I didn't see repeated frames of film grain. I was looking. I was looking. I didn't see any repeated film grain frames. There were like coffee stains and like spatter and wear, and this movie wasn't pretending to be a film from the 60s that you were watching in the 60s. This movie was pretending to be a film from the 60s that had been recovered recently. And the effort that went into this was impeccable. I can't even. There are people out there who probably aren't going to be reached by me saying this, but, there are people out there who will enjoy going frame by frame through this movie just to look at the spatter and the film grain and the degradation, because it's all fake. It's all imaginary. It's all simulacra. And it's amazing because this movie is like they did a high resolution scan. I want to say print. It's not a print. I think it would be a scan at this point, but it would be like a high resolution digitization of film in mediocre quality that had been like sort of okay kept, but probably like watched a couple of times. And it's like, if you put a film in a film canister and put that in like pretty constant, pretty unchanged humidity and temperature conditions for an extended period of time, it'll just be like fine. It'll be like a time capsule. But this movie is simulating something beyond that. It is simulating a movie that has had like exchange of hands and like people watching it who don't really understand the rarity of what they're seeing. People being like, "Oh, I got a projector. I got this old film print. Let's take a look. Oh, yeah, it's kind of shitty. Oh, whatever." And like that happening to this movie a couple of times before it ended up in the hands of somebody who put it, quote unquote, like in the part of the like imaginary story of the effects editor. The effects editor had an imaginary story of what happened to this movie's film reels. That's a thing that happened with this movie, The Similars, Los Parecidos. That's a thing that happened in this movie, is that the editor for the effects was like, what happened to the reels? I need to know for the effects to have continuity and internal logic. If that makes you want to watch this movie, we're done here. Go watch this movie. It's on Netflix as The Similars. But I looked up The Similars poster, and all the posters say Los Parecidos on them. The poster is amazing. Go look at the poster for this movie. Go look up The Similars poster right now. It's probably it's probably on screen. I probably used it as it's probably just a poster. I probably really got lazy, and the whole thing you're looking at is just the poster of the movie, and then I'm talking. But, like, whatever. You should still look it up and get a high-resolution one. It's like the second one on Google was good. And, oh, man, the poster is just... I want that poster in my room. I want that poster in a frame above my bed. Oh, my God. But, like... Yeah, I'm getting sidetracked by how good the poster is. Just the effort that went into pretending this movie was a real film that was filmed in like the 60s and ended up just like in somebody's basement and watched a few times over the years before somebody who it got showed to was like, dude, who released this movie? What do you mean it never got released? Yo, man, I'm in with so-and-so fucking productions. We should release this. That's sort of like the fake imaginary backstory of this movie being on Netflix right now, and it's not real. Somebody just filmed this movie with that as part of the narrative in their script. And the effort that went into it is shocking and beautiful. And you gotta go see this. I watched it just now. Couple of glasses of wine, little sandwich, bit of cheese. I had a little piece of extra mozzarella left over. It wasn't really big enough to do anything else with, so I ate that along with my cheese, along with my wine. Real fancy with my cheap grocery store rosé. Anyway, this movie is a masterpiece. It didn't deserve the watching experience that I put upon it just now by sitting here with a glass of wine and a piece of cheap cheese and just eating it and being like, oh, this is a pretty good movie. This movie didn't deserve that. This movie deserved to be in drive-in theaters for months and months and like a year and a half before it breaks into real film theaters, like theaters that normally do like fancy movies. This movie deserved to be released in 1964 and to still be playing in drive-ins and midnight screenings in 1968. That's what this movie deserved. I can't even believe what I fucking saw. It's like, oh my god. Oh my god. So anyway, I'm done with the no spoilers. You should go watch this. If you're still listening in a few seconds, it's because you don't give a shit. We need to assure that. Now, a few seconds just turned into a few minutes. I'm sorry. I've been in positions where I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to keep listening. And then as soon as I kept listening, I was like, I fucked up. I should have watched this movie. This is one of those movies. I'm going to tell you right now. If you're one of those people who's like, I'm not going to watch it. And then you listen to fucking Jay Bauman go on all about how this movie is really good and it really got to him. And you're like, fuck, I got to watch it, but it's ruined now. You need to go watch The Similars right now before I continue. Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? I lucked out. I've been in so many times where I didn't luck out. But today, I lucked out and was just like, I'm going to watch this movie. And if Jay Bowman was like, well, we're past the spoilers point, let's talk about The Similars, and kept going, I would have fucked up to keep watching that. So I'm not trying to compare myself to Jay Bowman. I'm specifically trying to do a better job of not being a good film reviewer right now. Because I'm fucking up the film review, telling you to just go fucking watch it. I'm imploring you to not listen to my bullshit right now and just go watch this movie. What's it going to cost you? An hour and a half? Just go do it. It's so good. Anyway. Spoilers. The movie begins. And there's a man in a fucking train station. Wait, no, I think it's a bus station. Doesn't matter. And there's this torrential fucking downpour. And he's like trying to get out of this bus station. He's got somewhere he needs to be. And it's revealed a little later that he needs to get to the hospital. He needs to get to the hospital because his wife is pregnant and giving birth right now, and he's late. He's later than she is. And he needs to be there. And everything's going crazy. But right now, there's this storm. And over time, other people arrive. There's a pregnant woman. She's got her own thing. She's escaping an abusive husband. She's on her own journey. And these two collide because he's like, I need to get out of here, and the buses aren't running in the storm. Maybe we can share a taxi. And she gets through to a taxi over the phone, so that seems to be coming together. But then more people arrive. Oh, I forgot. There's like a maybe homeless lady, a probably homeless lady who doesn't really speak English. Oh wait, no, it's not English. It's Spanish. She doesn't speak Spanish in the movie. She speaks a little bit towards the end. But she's just sort of in the corner. She doesn't get involved yet. And as more people arrive, there's like a young student guy. There's like this lady with her child who seems to be like under medical duress. He's got like a respirator thing. There's the lady who works in the train station as the bathroom attendant, and then the guy who works at the ticket booth there. They kind of know each other. There's all these characters. They all sort of gather. And over time, it's revealed that for reasons no one truly understands, people succumb to these horrible seizures, these painful seizures, where when they wake up, they start to transform against their will into one of these guys. That guy who has a pregnant wife elsewhere and trying to get out of here, they start to turn into him. And so, rightfully, everybody's a little freaked out by that. Including this guy who has nothing to do with this. And he's like, ah! And everybody else is like, ah! Which would be comical if all of the people going, ah! Didn't involve a shotgun being waved around. There's a shotgun. Oh, man. Oh, man. There's this whole subtext thing going on with the radio, where there's a radio playing in the station, and it keeps sort of playing music and news and things that are like sort of like in the situation and sort of kind of a commentary on it, but sometimes delivering information, but sometimes just delivering context. It's really good. This movie is fantastic. But when people sort of figure out what's happening, they sort of assume that this guy is like involved somehow, but he doesn't know what's happening. He doesn't. It starts to seem like maybe he doesn't even see what's happening the way they see what's happening. Maybe there's some sort of split in perception. But then it's revealed that this kid who's got like some sort of like brain thing, like the movie sort of hints at some things that might be going on to explain this, but never really gets in any details. It's kind of, the movie is like a little bit self-aware of the way older movies dealt with tropes like this, but is only subtly self-aware. It's kind of just using those tropes to the fullest effect rather than deconstructing any of them. But it's revealed that this kid is like Children of the Corn, magic powers, psychic, like autism thing going on, and he like read this comic book. It's going full Children of the Corn meets Creep Show. Oh man. And like he's sort of like doing this with his brain and imposing this horror on everybody, and like nobody really understands that that's what's happening until it's sort of too late. And the movie sort of rolls with this. The movie doesn't sort of do that. A lot of movies are like, crazy idea. Fuck it. And sort of give up on that. This movie sort of rolls with the crazy idea. By the end of the crazy idea, shit's sort of like actually altered. And fucking like the world is changed in a way that's not like devastating, but it is horrific. And there are consequences for Children of the Corn Kid. Like it's like that kid doesn't come off scot-free even, which is fucking metal. What movie like this does that? Oh man, but like, oh, it was really fun. It was super enjoyable. I really recommend people watch this movie. It had like a really crazy premise and it didn't chicken out on it. Now, this movie spent its budget in a way where a lot of people are gonna look at this and be like, "What the fuck? What is this movie?" Because it's not trying to be like a blockbuster movie with a big action sequence. There's no action sequence in this movie. This is zero action sequence. This is a movie like a drama where people talk to each other and try to figure out a problem, and the problem is crazy. So it takes a whole movie worth of talking to figure it out. Because this movie is being a movie from the fucking 60s. Like this movie exists within a framework, like a logic of framework, a framework of logic, where it sets limitations on itself. And within those limitations, it is able to achieve what very few movies that were really from this era were able to achieve, because it's like got the benefit of time, it's got the benefit of hindsight, it's got the benefit of actually being a contemporary movie filmed with contemporary technology, and the imperfections on it are faked and careful rather than like sidetrack. We're talking about Metropolis now. I dropped my phone. I watched Metropolis like last week for the first time on like the world's shittiest fucking rip of Metropolis on one of those like 60 fucking, oh, it says 50 on it. I mean, I had to look at it to, yeah, 50 fucking horror movie packs that for some reason has like a couple of, like, there's like a kaiju movie on this, but it's mostly old fucking American movies, and then there's fucking Metropolis on here. There's a couple of old fucking gangster movies. This pack doesn't know what it is. The point is, though, I recently watched Metropolis for the first time. And Metropolis does this thing where within the framework of the technology they had access to, I watched it and I was like, this motherfucker's from the future. Some guy who got sent back in time by an angry fucking genie was like, well, better make a movie fucking then, I guess. And just like threw knowledge, it feels like somebody threw knowledge at the filmmaking from decades after this point in history. It's so ahead of its time, and in a way where, I mean, like, technically, I mean, like, technique, and there are shots in Metropolis that were made with miniatures, and they composited film of people into shots of miniatures. And at the time, compositing didn't exist. I used the word so you know what I was talking about, but that wasn't a technology that existed at the time. And I don't know how they did it. Like, I know exactly what they did to do it. And it's like, you look at all the pieces of the puzzle, and you look at the end results of the picture that the final puzzle is, and you're like, no, those pieces don't make up to this. There's magic here. And Metropolis is like the only movie from the 20s that did that. No, I'm exaggerating wildly. Metropolis is like the standout movie that pulled this stunt, where it was just so above and beyond what anyone was expecting of the era. And this movie, The Similars, is using being actually a modern movie. Like, actually being a movie from today. Like, not being really from the 60s. It's using that to assemble, like, the pieces of the puzzle in a way that's perfect. That a real movie from the 60s would have been more limited by being from the 60s than this. Like, this movie has fake degraded color. The movie, they did a thing where it looks like the results of a movie that was filmed in color, but the film was printed to color in a way that didn't last. And the color is faded very severely to the point where some shots are almost completely black and white, and only certain very vibrant colors remain. And so it kind of ended up being a little bit like Sin City, but not literally what Sin City did. Sin City is a very hard, stylized, extremified version of this type of aesthetic. Because SimCity is very clearly on purpose. This movie is pretending to have had it happen by accident, where happenstance resulted in the perfect distribution of color. Because it looks like it just happened because this film was kept in bad conditions. That's what it looks like on screen, except for that the color is exactly where it's supposed to be, exactly where it needs to be every time it needs to be there. And it's so careful and I don't want to call it ingenious. I want to say geniuses did this because it's not really a genius. Genius implies invention. This is more craftsman. This is more artisan work than genius. This is someone who looked at a solved game, a thing that has been established and worked to understanding, and the mechanics of it are known. They looked at all of that and said, "This is my palette. I'm gonna Bob Ross this motherfucker and make like the perfect little stream and happy little clouds and wonderful little forest copse, little woods, little brook, babbling brooks, some little thrushes, some little twigs." Bob Ross didn't invent twigs. Bob Ross didn't invent clouds. Bob Ross is this crossing point of an understood, almost textbook. No, literally textbook style of painting. And a calm, meditative form of expression. Bob Ross isn't the paintings Bob Ross painted. The joy of painting isn't a PBS program. And this movie isn't really a movie from the 1960s. It's this dilution of movies from the 1960s. It's like, it's a little bit like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's a little bit like, I want to say Night of the Living Dead. It's got that like locked in a mall. It's not a mall. It's in this movie. It's a bus station. But it's got that like closed, we have access to this building, let's film in it vibe to it. But it's not either of those movies. It's this sort of milieu of that sort of thing. But what Bob Ross did right wasn't carefully, ingeniously picking subject matter or carefully and ingeniously picking colors. Bob Ross painted trees and mountains and water, and he painted them with the same, what was it, 12? I'm going to say 12, and that number's wrong, and I'm fucking it up as a Bob Ross fan, but he picked these basic palette colors that, you know why he picked those colors? Because those are the ones that came in starter sets. And with those colors and the kind of, like, subject matter that just was done to death, Bob Ross created the joy of painting for everyone. And again, Joy of Painting is not a PBS program. It's not just a PBS program. The joy of painting is an experience. And you don't even need to be painting along to experience that. And so you don't need to be aware of the effort and the attention and the care that went into making this not really a movie from the 60s to enjoy it. If you like The Twilight Zone, you will love this movie. If you like zombie movies, you will love this movie. If you like murder mysteries, you will love this movie. If you like period pieces, you will love this movie. But, in addition to all of that, if you like deconstructing filmmaking, just comparing different eras of film, any of that, fuck, watch The Similars. Holy shit, watch The Similars. You've already ruined it by getting this far into my fucking blurb about the fucking... Just watch it. Oh my god. Oh my god, I can't even... It was so good. So good. Just watch it. I don't have an outro. I don't really have any kind of blurb here to, like, say, like... And that's all, folks. I'm not doing that. Oh god, I gotta say something else so that's not my outro. The point is that you should watch this movie. It was really enjoyable. I can't even, like, it's hard for me to put into words exactly how and why. So I sort of rambled for a bunch of time here, as you've probably heard, to get this far. But you should watch The Similars. I am shocked at the attention to this. Even if just, like, you like old movies, you should watch this movie so you can feel smug about looking at it and being like, oh, well, they clearly didn't film it on specifically 38mm film because you can tell that the lens flares are all incorrect. You should watch this fucking movie for that. You will love this movie. If you're that dude, if you're that person, watch this movie and win over this film. Because this movie is an excellent, excellent film that did everything in its power to get it right. And if you can find fault in the accuracy of the false period filmmaking attempt of this, that's you and this movie engaging in a high-level game that the movie is trying to engage you in. And also, it's a great horror film! Oh, it was really fun. I didn't even get into any of the subtext stuff. There's this whole thing about protests. There's this whole thing about, like, the guy who everyone's turning into. He's sort of just a guy. He keeps yelling at people, I just work in a mine. I'm nobody. What the fuck? And that's a feature of what this movie is on about. I didn't even get into any of that. Watch the movie. Watch it. Anyway, watch the movie. It's called The Similars. It's called The Similars. Watch it. Oh, it's good. That is all. Watch it.